Hi, my name is Vicky Now. I am the author of A Brief Alphabet of Torture, Fish in Exile, Sheep Machine, The Vanishing Point of Desire, Umbilical Hospital, and I collaborated on a poetry manuscript with Ali Ross. Today I am going to provide you a brief lecture on the art of discipline. In this lecture, I will talk about the art of discipline, what it is, and how does a writer traditionally and non-traditionally define it, and what are some emotional and psychic techniques one could apply to advance one's authority, autonomy, and regimen in creating major pieces of writing. I will provide examples of disciplinary methods that impair healthy conditions and desires for creativity, and how to avoid these pitfalls. Discipline is a kinesthetic manifestation of your soul's determination across time and across space, if the cosmos permits it. Traditionally, discipline is obedient with a precise set of parameters to serve a few purposes, such as inducting a new law into place, and has been and can be viewed as training with an iron hand and will. Establishing a ritual is the fastest way to activate discipline. Ritual is habit forming, and it is ultimately the birth in rebirth. Why birth in rebirth? Because it's about replacing one habit for another. To be a couch potato for 19 hours a day, you have to show up on that couch for 19 hours a day. It is hard work. Eating bags of potato chips, second by second, hour by hour, with your red eyes glued to the TV. If you plan on being a writer, you are replacing bags of potato chips for words, and you are reinserting them into the mouth of a notebook, computer, typewriter, or all of those mouths at once. Like a couch potato, time feels borderless and boundless. Similarly, once you become a writer, your consciousness will never stop sleeping or eating. It is a consumption machine that only knows how to poop out silhouettes of desire. I say silhouettes and not desire in itself, because when you write, the discipline would only get you near the edge of what you want to say, but never ever what you truly want to say. You ached and yearned to consummate your vision, but like a cigar, closer, but never enough. When asked if you are a writer, you should tell them that you only know how to cry, because genetically modified potato chips have a lot of salt. But in general, rituals are difficult to form or alter if your emotional gaze hasn't been focused and your confidence is low, especially if you feel sacrifice is an optional event or non-mandatory. It takes effort to move your butt from one prison to another kind of prison system. To acquire freedom in discipline, you must place forces of whim, impulsion, volatility in chains, as these seductresses or sirens will call your name, like Ulysses on that ship, every second of your existence. Certain disciplinarians say discipline is confidence wearing a wedding dress made of squares and rectangles. A wedding dress, smooth and flowing, sensual and organic, elongated and shapely, adorned with the parameters, precise rules of behaviors, thus geometrically fluent, as in squarishness and rectangular richness. Confidence, like a Western-born wedding, unless you are Britney Spears, Carmen Electra, Paul Bettany, isn't born overnight. It is developed across time, like being in any courtship. First, you build up the courage to ask your date out, and once your date rating accepts your gallantry, you proceed to take her out for dinners or movies. Time spent with rating. And if you are courting rating and you want her for wife, don't squander your time with energy-depleting friends such as 20-hour video game marathons and social media outlets such as Facebook. Because it is easier to trade one obsession or rebirth for another, you should take great care in filtering your systems of being. Social media, like cocaine, has an exponential ability to take you places where you do not want to go. This is why discipline is often linked with confidence, because they are different sectors of faith, like cousins on a family tree. Discipline is the corporeal or kinesthetic division of belief, and confidence is its psychic branch. One acts, the other manifests. If you feel weak, it is because you have not built the muscle of confidence. To build this muscle, you must practice, and discipline will provide you the structure and the kinesthetic tool to manifest this muscle. All family members, though not necessarily living in the same households, and or may not have seen each other, are aware of each other. Perhaps discipline has seen the face of confidence, and maybe confidence has noticed the stalwart left ankle of discipline, but regardless, they both reside in the same family bush. They will go weak or strong together as a unit. If you choose to abandon discipline, confidence will also join you in this festivity. In fact, confidence may already have its foot out the door and may explain why you are so quick to relinquish self-control. This is one of the dangers of peer family pressures. Don't let your mind snowball or free fall, because once it does, it is hard to stop or block. Traditional self-rating ordinance follows the brigade military method similarly to how a chef runs his or her kitchen. In the kitchen, there are sharp knives like sharp words and many stoves burning at once, with many black burners as well, and it's intense and fast. You have these massive orders coming in, and they all must be done at once and be ready within a limited time. Without discipline, this kind of chaos would not have its order. The chef, like the writer, is the conductor, the commander-in-chief, the sovereign leader of this orchestra of sounds, voices, denouement, characters, protagonists, antagonists, sous chefs, pots and pans, knives and chives, planks of salmon and haddock, turmeric and salt, vapor and ice, and anything could go wrong. For a smooth kitchen to run itself, if the chef asks you to mince the cilantro into snail-shaped earrings, you say, "Yes, chef," and execute each cilantroic snail without rebellion or contempt, and with utter elegance and perfection. If the protagonist demands you to drive her off the cliff, you don't proceed with caution. You drive her out of the page and off the abyss of the novel's consciousness. And if you practice on this art of discipline, the discipline of giving yourself and your protagonist problems, it will teach you the confidence of how to get out the holes or graveyards you have dug for yourself without negative consequences. Novak Djokovic, the #1 player in the tennis world, was one championship point from being unable to defend his Wimbledon title. His opponent, the elegant, crowd-loved Federer, led him in the 5th set and had broken him, leading 8-7, 40-15, one serve away, and Djokovic would be denied of his 5th Wimbledon crown. Even before the game was over, all broadcasters were ready and eager to announce Roger Federer as the 2011 Wimbledon winner, one which he has already won 8 times. Djokovic, calm and steady, took a deep breath and returned Federer's serve. One by one, he took away the Swiss lead and ultimately defeated him and an army, a crowd of 15,000 Wimbledon spectators who were all rooting against him. But Novak Djokovic has been here a couple of times before. In fact, 8 years ago, where he was behind, about to lose to the Swiss, so unloved by the sophomoric crowd in Flushing Meadows, in the final, playing against Federer again in the US Open 2011. But he dug deep within himself, found his self-belief, his mental will and strength, and crushed the obnoxiously biased 22,000 crowd and Federer for the US Open crown. Discipline has given him the muscle of assurance and success, and all he has to do was activate that winner repeat button within his supreme consciousness and win. What confidence muscle is that, you might like to ask? It is this muscle from the Siberian mouth of Djokovic. When the crowd chanted Roger, I hear Novak. In a case for one of you, when the readers chanted J.K. Rowling, I hear Vicky now. In the past, Novak used to express his anger towards the prejudiced crowd by shouting and screaming and beating his chest, as he learned quickly. It took him only half a decade or so. This was an effective way to deplete one's energy and focus quickly. He learned to turn inwards for his self-belief, thus the transmutation. Novak in place of Roger approach, as he likes to call it. Once you have fully activated the device of discipline, your own concept of discipline, it is hard to discern coolness from stupidity, stubbornness from conviction. It is hard because you are not an oracle or a prophet. You are on a particular path guided by the mothership board of you. You don't have the foresight to see what goes wrong and what goes right. You only know one thing. You must do something, anything. You're writing a novel. Each week you write one chapter for it, and with the art of discipline, by the 17th week, you are nearly done with your book. 5 chapters before you finish the book, you notice a gigantic hole in your plot, and you must stop and go back. But you have streamlined your soul for the next 5 chapters for the next 5 weeks, and instead of making a U-turn, you wasted the rest of your time by pressing forth. You wasted your time. Early in my writing life, I was unwaveringly strict with myself. I used to work for a non-profit company where I came in at 8 a.m. and returned home at 5 p.m. If I wrote after 5 p.m., my head would become a blob of green jello. A gelatin alien that could make a wannabe cantaloupe jealous. So the only time I could work on my writing was at an ungodly hour like 5 a.m. I would do this every day for months. Everything I wrote was terrible because I was too dormant and sleepy and exhausted, and the sunrise was so captivatingly soft. I would put myself through this torture because I thought this was what discipline looked like. I know now that this kind of discipline was a fancy version of stupidity. The best writing I've done requires sharpness, and I usually write very well after I had a good night's sleep. Quantity, as I learned very quickly, isn't the same as quality, and so I adapted. I used to have a quota, forcing myself to write 10 pages a week. That too was terrible because although I did write 10 pages a week, the contents were so stupid. I wish I had become the plastic surgeon my mother wanted me to be and pretended that pumping Botox into people's wizened lips was my version of writing a novel verbally. Each time I look at Khloe Kardashian, I think to myself, I could have written a novel like her face. Discipline without consciousness is like driving a Tesla with petroleum, or wiping one's ass without toilet paper. You can still do it, but do you really want to place your butt cheeks over the faucet and using your hands? Well, this traditional technique has allowed you to become a production machine, a virtue in the eyes of some. This type of discipline is detrimental to the quality of your work, and one must turn to other techniques for guidance and supervision. Non-traditional techniques move organically and are shaped with flexibility and not controlled nor handcuffed by linear time. For example, I wrote I Am Not a Photographer when I was 33 years old in 2012, when I was a student and teaching a fiction course at Brown University. A week before this midterm, I had given my students a very difficult task. They were to write a novel in 2 weeks. I did not define the novel as anything over 40,000 words. I usually test drive the assignments prompts I assign my students so that I know what it is like to be in their shoes. And so, 2 weeks before assigning them this task, I executed the 40K plus prompt completely and gave birth to I Am Not a Photographer. While I did not prepare my students, who were predominantly pre-meds, to write a novel in such a short time, I had given them something else, a beautiful gift, fear and terror. By the end of the class, they were in full-blown panic mode. Their eyes were throwing sharp darts at me, and many came up to me after class to express their terror and concern. They felt that it was unfair to give such a task during mid-exams where they had 5 other tests they had to study for. I informed them to spend a week of Thanksgiving to brainstorm and that we would find a solution together as a class. Before climbing on the bus to teach that particular week, I saw a van with its logo and big advertisement words written on one of its sides that says that a flower is worth 1,000 words. In class, I suggested that they turn to other system of conversion or alternative disciplinary methods to help them manifest the task at hand. I told them that if one of them brought a bouquet of 41 roses, I would take it as their novel. If everyone in class wrote 3,000 words each, they could submit the novel as a class, and I would have accepted it. The assignment was designed for them to think outside the box, not to give them emotional concussions. And so, the students were relieved and thrilled. 2 students collaborated together to write a children's book with words and images. Another gathered all her photographs she had taken in the last 5 years and ordered them in a narrative fashion. One student turned to computer programming to manifest his book. In less than 2 days, he submitted 2 manuscripts. He took 2 massive classics, War and Peace and James Joyce's Ulysses, and he programmed it so that every other word of those 2 books had the word sex in it. And he read an excerpt of it in class for us. When we are bound by linear time, we find attractive alternative universes for our stories. We are no longer bound by the law of tradition, knocking books in a sequential way. Writing ultimately is an act of solution solving. And discipline, faith in actions, provide us the emotional, intellectual, and physical muscles, resources, or tools for us to make everything out of nothing. We spend most of it trying to be handsome Benedict Cumberbatch, as in Sherlock or Alan Turing. But writing could be our Carl Jung to our best therapist. I love Greek and Roman mythologies because my Latin tutor, Ruth, saw them as a language of persuasion. But I see them as a language for therapy. I use mythologies to heal myself from narrative pain, like the lidocaine patches I put on my chest after open heart surgery to help bridge my sternum from the reality of my muscles, which has been torn apart by a medical saw 9 weeks ago. Let me tell you about the virtue of discipline through the eyes of Cupid and Psyche. Cupid, being the god of love, naturally is a very beautiful man, but he kept his beauty from his lover, Psyche, because he was a god, and he could do that sort of thing. Venus, goddess of beauty, was threatened by Cupid's handsome gorgeousness, and he decided to take him out of competition by whispering nefarious things into Psyche's ears through Psyche's spiteful sisters. Your lover, Cupid, must be so hideous, because if he wasn't hideous, he wouldn't make love to you in the dark. He would fuck you in broad daylight. In a moment of weakness and after months of convincing, Psyche broke down, and after they made love and Cupid had fallen asleep, Psyche walked into their postcoital chamber with a candle where her lover's beautiful face was revealed to her in the flickering light. She regretted it immediately because she was forbidden to see his face. He deserted her or sent her to hell. I can't remember which. But the point is that discipline is a very beautiful thing. It trains us from the sorry rocked we are, and to diamonds worthy of adoration and possession. But like Cupid, the best kind of discipline requires that we make love to it in the dark and never sees its gorgeous face. Because once we do, we regret having seen it as I have seen mine. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your time.